Go. All right, everybody. So welcome again to the Puna Kōrero meeting of the 6th of April 2023. I'd like to, before we start, invite Taku Parai to lead us in the karakia. Thank you very much, Taku. Let's move straight on to item number 2, apologies. We have an apology from Councillor Philo. I'll move that apology, seconded by Councillor Hayward. No other apologies. I'll put that. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. All right, we have no requests to speak at the public forum, so I'll ask whether there are any conflict of interest declarations for the meeting. There being none, as I note, I'll also note that there are no items of extraordinary business. And that brings us to the confirmation of the minutes of the Puna Kōrero meeting of the 23rd of March this year. I've moved them, seconded by Josh. Are there any corrections to the minutes that anyone has? All right, I'll now put those minutes. All those in favour? Aye. Those against? Carried. Thank you. Now that moves us to item 7.1, which is the Wellington Water draft statement of intent. I'm going to move this to get it onto the table, seconded by Mayor Baker. I'm assuming that you've read through this, and what I will do is, just ask Wendy Walker to run through for us how we get to this point, and very briefly, because it is rather complicated. We have a committee, and we send them a letter of intent, and they come back with this draft statement of intent. So there's still water to go under the bridge, but could I ask you, Wendy, to give us a brief rundown on this?
Kia ora, councillors. So the statement of intent is one of the ways that we influence the direction of travel for Wellington Water. And of course, probably the main way for us is through our investment and our long-term plan and annual plans as we put our money or our citizens' money into public money into Wellington Water. So that's probably the primary way, but the draft statement of intent it's a standard governance document, and it's an important feature of the governance of Wellington Water as a company, a council-controlled entity. So in the past, we haven't always passed it in front of the council. It's not a requirement, but we thought it was a good idea, best practice, to put it in front of the council, because it is one of the main, particularly at the outcome level, how you influence direction. And as Councillor Leggett said, it starts with a letter of expectation, which is drafted sort of by a number of people actually, but and that sets out what the Wellington Water Committee and the shareholding councils want to see in the statement of intent. And then Wellington Water drafts this up. It goes to their board for consideration, so they have put it in front of us. In front of the Wellington Water Committee in the first instance, and then we are taking it back to all of our councils. So it's a wee bit of a drafting nightmare, to be honest, because of course everyone's got their own, each council has their own priorities. So we do try and kind of traverse from the outcome right through to service level, you'll see there's KPIs and things in there. So it's an important document, but it's also a complicated document too. There's always some commentary on it at the Wellington Water Committee. There's often some debate, particularly around the nuances of where the emphasis should be for the company. The opportunity is with you today to provide that feedback. We have to do it by the beginning of May so that it can be redrafted and any feedback can go into the redraft, which then in turn is considered by the committee in July. So that's...
Thank you, Wendy. I think that's very comprehensive. Are there any questions that people want to ask? Councillor Weehapi.
Thank you. How would underinvestment from other councils affect this intent, or does it not really affect us or our situation?
It won't affect what happens here, but it will show up in the KPIs overall. We've all been very jealously guarding the, our investment goes to our people. That's our requirement with Wellington Water. So aside from there is a corporate part of their funding that we give them, which is a shared, but that's done on a formula basis as well. So the bigger the council, the more you pay. So, obviously their management team, their IT system, all those corporate functions are funded through a management fee for each council. But, in terms of actual services on the ground, if we invest, we get the money into our city.
Yeah, and I understand they are reassuring us that they can deliver on our asset management plan expectations. Councillor Trillin.
Yeah, cheers. Just a small note from me. It's substantively broadly happy with this. It's good to see focus around climate targets, specifically noting the delivery of expected service levels for fluoride as well, which we've talked about a few times since the trouble in the last couple of years. I just had a note actually in terms of the structure and how the report is delivered, and I agree with your comments, Wendy, around how this is quite a complicated report. I would find it really helpful if there was a proper comprehensive executive summary on something like this. There was a very high level forward, which wasn't super helpful. Often the reports we get from our offices are really good in that respect, and there just wasn't anything like that here. So I guess I would just note that for ease of understanding, something like that would be helpful. But substantively, I'm broadly happy with this.
Thank you, Councillor Trillin. Is it my understanding that maybe the final document will come out with an executive summary if it's going to go to... But anyway, it's a great comment and good for us to feed that back, and I think it's very smart. Are there any other questions or comments? Councillor Hayward.
I have a question, but I might have to, depending on the number of stuff, so I might have a comment as well, some feedback as well. My pātai is, have there been any changes to the targets in this draft statement of intent compared to the previous statement of intent? And if so, can you give some commentary why?
To be honest, I'm not sure. I would have to come back to you on that, Councillor, but I don't think so, because it's all within a one LTP period. So I don't think that either the performance measures or the targets have changed, but I can double check that for you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
My commentary on this is that, and has already been kind of foreshadowed by some of the other comments from councillors. I'm sure I won't be the only one saying this, but I'll best start by just making the work of Wellington Water from the shovel to the boardroom. And I don't say that to be a banality. I point out that they are individuals who are employed, who are skilled and experienced in this particular area. I am not a quantity surveyor. I am not an architect or a civil engineer or a cost accountant. So I do not try and do their job for them. My job is to make sure that they're doing their job. A point that I try to remind myself as chair of the Joint Committee with the Wastewater Treatment Plant. I read over this document and there are three things that I point out here. The first is on page 14 of the report, 29 in diligent. And I just, with regards to the wastewater treatment plant, I think greater care should be taken in the terms of our language of additional investment over this time period, particularly around resilience. And this will become an issue in subsequent meetings of that committee with regards to the ability to make sure that the plant is operational when there's a power cut, for instance. So greater care must be taken in that regard. Pages 15, again, 30 in diligence, 17 as well, cover a couple of sentences I think are really important to highlight, and I'm going to read them out very short here, mana. Investment in renewals has increased, but it will take many years to turn the tide. The renewal of assets in poor condition is fundamental to both the performance of the costs of the service they provide and is generally significantly cheaper to replace an asset before it fails. Page 15, this little section here. The costs of maintenance and operating materials have risen sharply, as have other significant operating costs such as landfill disposal of wastewater biosolids, chemicals and energy. Labour shortages often require us to use more expensive contract suppliers to complete our tasks that would normally be completed internally. Similar pressures are also being observed in our capital works program, and we continue to work hard to manage this challenge. While inflation was anticipated within the LTPs, the forecasted costs for the next 12 months are approximately 30% higher than forecast in LTPs. This document has had some consideration by individuals who are skilled and knowledgeable in this space. They are giving us, as decision makers, sober analysis of the situation that sits before us. I read this and I keep thinking, why anyone would, for the life of me, why anyone would choose to not take that guidance seriously. I think in particular of our friends in Wellington City Council to the south. When the request for additional funding comes in and they say no, based on analysis that is now in this document, the high-level document. So to my colleagues down south, many of whom I respect immensely, they've decided to wave the white flag. Because to not support the funding increases that, from their point of view, for whatever reason, means they're happy with more people complaining about water leaks and worse. We have an obligation to our communities to push on, and none of us can turn back the clock and change how much attention this council or any council in making sure our pipes never got to this state. We do, however, have an obligation to meet the challenge of fixing them. The irony of a council being given advice and refusing to take it in spite of the pain that it would cost ratepayers is precisely the reason, after 30 years, we have broken pipes under our feet. They could not have given us a greater example. Well done, Wellington City. They may choose to surrender, but I do not. Kia ora.
Thank you, Councillor Hayward. Well said. It is a message, this is intended as a message to shareholders, and I think, we have got that message. Let's hope one or two of the other councils get the same message. We recognise, I'll just point this out, at the beginning of the long-term plan, this will be the third year in terms of spending on water, that we, because of funding difficulties, chose to put more effort into capital and recognise, and this will come up in the next round, that we were probably still underfunding renewals. So, but it is going to be an issue that we're going to have to face, exacerbated by what you also mentioned, the cost increases that are indicated here. So, yeah, thank you for making that comment. Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, reading this statement, this entire statement filled me with dread, actually. I think I got the impression of 800 Wellington water workers with their finger in the dike just holding on till July next year. And it tells us of the region, people using 400 litres of water a day each. But then it tells us 40% of that water is being lost through leaks. So that means we're only using about 240 litres, which seems reasonable. We're told that the need as a region to spend 10 million a year just assessing the state of our pipes, and we're only providing a quarter of that. That just seems ridiculous that we're not actually putting the work into finding out the state of it. And the one thing that could help us find the state of those pipes is water metering, but there is no funding at all for water metering. That's the thing that could be setting it off, and finding where all these leaks are and what's happening in the system. So, and next we learn we're just holding the line and providing services to existing residents, and that there's no scope in the current funding for handling any of the growth. Further, we're told that at the current level of investment, councils can't meet existing environmental standards, let alone higher standards in the Natural Resources Plan. Adaptation and mitigation are key in meeting the climate crisis, but again, no money is there for adaptation. I thought Porirua was actually putting money into that. Are we putting money into that?
Resilience.
Not through
Not
Wellington
specifically.
Water.
No. Okay. And finally,
It's a capital project.
there's the workforce. We're told Wellington Water's pulling out all the stops to ensure they retain their existing employees with water skills, given the lack of skills around New Zealand. But there's nothing in the document that talks about training people. And I was talking to a chap from Whitireia and Welltech the other day, and he was telling me that it's virtually impossible to get in the ear of Wellington Water to talk about training courses. They stand ready to provide those courses, but they can't get a listening ear, and they are at a loss to understand why that is. So I just see a nightmare for ratepayers in July next year when Entity C, if it does take over, the cost of water is going to go through the roof for ratepayers, and it's not going to be on the council books, but it'll be on ratepayers' books.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan.
That's me.
I would point out that I think resilience is taken care of when we do major projects. For example, the new sewer line in Bothamley Park, for example. So resilience is taken into account there in terms of adaptation. Fair comments. It is only a statement of corporate intent, but it does point out some things to us. Okay. Any other? Yes, Mayor Baker.
I'd point out that at the table we obviously have a lot of discussion around the water table, and there is a number of mayors, as Jeff has suggested, and there's a couple more out Upper Hutt Way who choose not to invest as well. So you'll find that Lower Hutt and Porirua are investing more than any other council for our leaky pipes. And whether it's Entity C or whether it's a new announcement next week, no matter what happens, we're still in with the water entity. So we have to spend what we can now and in our long-term plan, because we just don't know what's happening. So we have to keep going. So we'll never get agreement around the table on all the words, but I'm happy with what we've got at the moment.
Thank you, Councillor Baker. Mayor Baker.
Call me anything.
No, that wasn't a Freudian slip. I'd just point out also, Mike, that Wellington Water are investing in training. So they've had a number of training courses for bringing people on to train in that water area.
But surely when we have Whitireia and Welltech there sitting ready to do it.
I'm sure they have their reasons for doing what they're doing. I don't know the detail of that, but fair point. Fair point. Anyone else want to make any comments about this draft statement of intent? If not, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. Thank you, everyone, for that discussion. That moves us to item 7.2, which is the proposed annual plan and consultation document. I'll move it to get onto the table. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Trillin. Now, I'm going to take it that you've read this. There are some updates that we need to listen to as well. And first of all, I'll ask Wendy Walker and then Nick Etheridge to talk to us about some of the wider issues.
I just wanted to make some preliminary comments. They're kind of process comments, really. So we do this process every year in one version or another. The draft, when we put it out for consultation, is the council's proposal, but it is a draft. It's not a final conclusion. So we go through consultation to get feedback from our community and sometimes other stakeholders on what we should be doing. There are a number of things that will have an impact between in matters of fact between us releasing whatever we get to today and the final. We'll have all noticed the OCR's shifted. That will have some consequential impacts. We do always finalise our growth figure between now and June. Generally, we get some benefit out of it. I'm not sure we are this year, but we are able to finalise that. And I guess we will have all noticed the living wage came in this week rather higher than we were probably expecting. So there's some impacts there. So I guess the point I'm really making is that there's still shifting sands. I mean, time goes on, doesn't it? And there's always changes. When we finalise in June, there's changes beyond that we also can't change once we've set our budget. But there will be some shifts between now and the final. So just wanted you to be aware of that, and I'll pass over to Nick to talk in more detail.
Thank you, Wendy. Morena, councillors. So my notes are really just on process as well. So just want to draw your attention to some minor editorial changes that have arisen between now and when we presented the document to you, which was only 5 days ago. So just want to draw your attention to those changes. Will include just some minor editorial corrections from Councillor Duncan. Thank you, Councillor Duncan.
Surely not.
No, it's much appreciated. It's always good to have more eyes. And to ensure our preference of options isn't lost, we'll bring them forward from page 17 to page 6 in the summary, so that our preference of the option 2s for both items is too far back in the document. On reading it again, we think it needs to come further forward so that people get a sense of where we would like to go early on, so as they're reading the document they can assess that for themselves. So they don't make any material difference to the information, to the intent behind it. It's just how it reads. So just to let you know, we will make those 2 changes, and obviously anything else that comes from you for this session this morning, we've got time to make those changes before the document goes out next week. So kia ora.
Thank you very much, Nick. I'll now open it up for discussion. Councillor Duncan, you have some more changes?
No, just thank you, Nick, for these pages you sent through to us. And I just know Cannons Creek Library on the calendar, and I think there's a lot of people up there that probably don't have internet access and things. It would be quite good if we could incorporate them into the plan.
No, through you, Chair. Noted, we'll do that. And sorry, just to say, we have sent you the engagement material, some supporting information. That schedule is live. It will change and be modified as we go. So please bring any of that feedback, and we will do our best to make that work.
That's great. So if you've got anything outside this meeting, there's still time to feed that back to Nick and her team. Thank you. Mayor Baker, did you have a... Okay. Councillor Hayward.
Kia ora no hea mana. I'm going to close off the loop by talking from the previous item and bring it into this one. Because I think that those who are going to be watching this, especially trying to get more information about it, should probably get some understanding of how, at least for me as a councillor, how I'm reflecting the decisions moving forward. This has been going... The councillors have received this a few weeks back in terms of what the likely impact to rates over the next year and beyond. I think there's nobody here on this table who doesn't feel a sense of pain when they have a look at the financial part of the plan. And I would be mindful of it even if I wasn't a ratepayer. So let's not run away from the fact that there's no magic money tree, and the things that we want to have done have to be paid somewhere. There's no silverware to sell, there's no dividends from some large airport or port to help us out. If we want to talk tough on fixing the pipes, then we must hold the course. Can't argue with the plumber at 2 o'clock in the morning when your toilet overflows. The work must be done. The challenge is whether to use the credit card to pay for that or to pay for it straight away, knowing that you're going to have to pay it back with interest. And yesterday's announcement on OCO makes that very clear. Of course, the elephant in the room is that in a year's time, the rest of the 23% rates that's increase that's required is going to have to be due to be resolved as well. We are now in the middle of the storm. If Cyclone Gabrielle is a portent of climate change, then this annual plan must be seen as the reality that our ratepayers are now having to endure the harvest of underinvestment in our water networks. I have no joy in talking about this situation. I'm looking forward to engaging with the community about it. I look to their judgment as to what is an appropriate way to guide the pathway forward. Finally, I'll talk about I still feel an unease around our fees, particularly for those for our sporting organisations and the burden on whānau for that and the young people. It's an issue that I think, again, I'd like to hear from the community about as we walk through this annual plan. With that, I leave it there. Kia ora.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hayward. Anyone else like to make some comment? If not, we know that there's a chance to make, as I've said just a minute ago.
Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Oh, did I miss you?
I put my hand up just as you went past me. I was a little bit
Sorry,
slow off
Councillor
the mark.
Trillin.
No, that's on me. That's on me. Thank you. Just a really quick one. And to be honest, I'm not sure if this even necessarily requires a change in this document. I'm just thinking about the way in which we are pitching this annual plan and we're talking about it. And my only concern is that even looking through the way that we've framed things at the very beginning and the statement that we've got, elements of it almost feel a little bit defensive. And I think this is something that I would like us to really own. And just in the way that we frame some of these things about how, option one is maintaining what we said in the LTP around rates. Well, the way that I would think about this is that we are trying to deliver on the level of services that we consulted on in the LTP, and we're trying to deliver that, and that we back our LTP. We think that that's exactly what we need. So I don't know if it necessarily needs any particular changes in here, but just the way that we're talking about this, the way that we're pitching this, I think we own that. We stand proud on what we said we would do in the LTP. We acknowledge that was turning around. We talked about decades of underinvestment and not delivering services that were up to the level that we want. And I think that's actually a really positive news story, that we are being bold and brave in our annual plan and saying we know this is what the community needs, and we're presenting some options in order to be able to deliver that. So I just wanted to flag that. That the other comment I just wanted to very quickly make, just while we're looking at this, and this is more to fellow councillors as well, we're talking about the level of rates that we're looking at here, and the various options that we have available. Looking at page 131 on diligent and the funding allocations that we've got there. If you look at the capital allocations on climate change, it is zeros across the board. We need to keep that in mind, because wherever we land here this year, there's going to be stuff coming up on that in the LTP next year, and that's more costs. They're going to keep going up. Everything we put off now is going to make that tougher and tougher and tougher. So just wanted to take that opportunity to reiterate that. But otherwise, happy with this. I think it reflects really well what we talked about in workshops. So thanks very much. And that's everything from me.
Thanks, Councillor Trillin. I guess you can take that under advisement, Nick, and just have a look and see whether there could be any reframing there. I have no doubt, as you say, Josh, that all of us sitting around this table, we are owning this, and we are fronting up, and I think we are prepared to do that and to listen to people. These are tough decisions for everyone, not just us, as you will see by some of the tables, which are complicated by changes in valuations, and that'll be a difficult thing to work through as well. So, unless there's anyone else that I'm going to put the motion. All those in favour? Those against? Carried. And we all look forward to the discussions that are going to ensue. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the meeting. I'd like to invite Taku Parai again to close the meeting with a karakia. Well, thank you very much, everybody. We're now going to move into a council workshop.